So, could Texas end up with a Democratic senator by the end of the midterms? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. But the Texas Senate primary is heating up and getting even more interesting. Take a look at this poll conducted by the University of Texas and the Texas Politics Project. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett currently holds a double digit lead over her opponent, Texas State Congressman James Talarico, in a hypothetical matchup. The poll took place before Talarico's interview with Late Show host Stephen Colbert. And to be sure, other surveys have shown tighter races, with one showing Talarico in the lead. Talarico's team also said that their internal polling shows that he's in the lead.
Meanwhile, on the Republican side, the University of Texas and Texas Politics Project survey shows a much tighter race between Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, U.S. Senator John Cornyn, and Congressman Wesley Hunt. Paxton and Cornyn are statistically tied due to the margin of error, but Paxton holds a 2-point lead in the results. Hunt trails behind with 26% of support. If neither candidate wins the majority, the race heads to a runoff in May.
Now, this hotly anticipated primary has set a record for the most expensive ever. Republicans have outspent Democrats $88 million to $22 million, with the total amount of campaign ad spending being $110 million. The poll surveyed 1,300 self-declared registered voters in Texas and was conducted from February the 2nd to the 16th. The Democratic primary hypothetical matchup has a margin of error of 5.1 percentage points, and the GOP's matchup margin of error is 5.2 percentage points. Oh my gosh, I don't think we've ever paid so much attention to this particular race. To look at we can start with the GOP, because I think with seeing how close everything is, there's like a distinct line in the party of go with somebody who maybe is looked at a lot of people as better choice, John Cornyn, to people that have been in the Republican Party for a long time. You can correct me if I'm wrong, rather than Ken Paxton, who people think may possibly lose. And I think more of MAGA likes Ken Paxton.
Yeah, it's institutional versus MAGA, right? John Cornyn has been a senator. He was the Senate Majority Whip for a while, the number 2 in leadership in the Senate under Mitch McConnell at the time, versus Ken Paxton, who is much more MAGA, much more grassroots. And people like to say, well, Paxton's not a great candidate. They try to say that he has baggage. He's won multiple statewide with all of this information out there about him. The really interesting thing to me is we don't know the electorate. Texas does not have registered primaries. And so all of the polling we're seeing and all the enthusiasm we're seeing is really just kind of a shot in the dark at this point, because we really don't know who is going to turn up. Republicans have outperformed themselves previously in this early vote. This is a competitive race. Democrats, everybody's like, oh, look at how big their numbers are, how great their turnout is. They haven't had a competitive primary in Texas for Democrats to get excited about in 20 years or so. So to say that I think their polling is likely off on the Democrat side. I also think that the enthusiasm that people are seeing is a blue mirage to some blue, fever dream that Texas Democrats have had for years. If it's Beto, if it's the lady who wore her sneakers on the floor, or if it's Colin Allred, they think that they can spend all this money and flip Texas. They're spending the money for the long game. They think if they spend all this money, because they're going to light, $100 million on fire, Democrats trying to chase this Senate seat. They're playing the long game that they think down the road, years, decades, that they can flip Texas. And that's why they spend big in these races, not because they actually think Talarico or Crocket can win.
Well, I think Cornyn is actually afraid based on some things that he said. He's saying this is existential. That's a quote. He's like, I know he wants this to the opportunity.
And his latest ad pulled no punches.
But he's saying, we know, like you just said, Texas hasn't elected a Democrat in that position since 1994. And if Paxton wins this GOP nomination, he's saying that he really thinks Democrats could flip the seat. And so that would be concerning. I mean, people really, especially ever since the Colbert interview that aired online, that got millions more views than it probably would have even gotten if it just aired regularly on TV.
Talarico which was not President Trump's fault as much as James Talarico lied about that. That was CBS's decision, not the FCC.
If it was a tactic, it worked out for him.
Listen, play politics when you get the money. Heck yeah.
Because he now is more of a household name. Like with Jasmine Crockett, a lot of people knew who she was. She's polling like 71% of name recognition alone. So I think
that's why she's up in these polls right now, because you can't actually know the electorate.
Like, who's this person?
Name ID.
Yeah.
But Talarico, for being a state senator and a state member the way he is, can raise money. I have a lot of people running for Congress and Senate I wish could raise money the way that Talarico does. And that is a lower office than Crocket. She has a bigger platform. So I actually think Talarico is in a better spot to win this primary. The problem is Democrats, again, with this big blue fever dream. Look, he's a moderate. Look, we're going to be able to get him elected. And then $100 million chasing the dream.
Well, I think Democrats are in a similar position, right? Because the party has to figure out where it's going after the Kamala loss. And you have somebody like Jasmine Crockett who is almost mirroring the Newsom approach, or Newsom's mirroring her of like fighting fire with fire. And is that the way that you want to move forward? Really pushing forward with, I'm going to meet you right where you are, FAFO in her own way. And then you have Talarico, who, like you said, is probably the same thing as them choosing Abigail Spanberger to respond to State of the Union, presenting as moderate, could work across the aisle. And so where does the Democratic Party go? I think that's why so many people are looking at this race. Like, if they win here, and if one of them come out superior, which one of them will, Talarico or Jasmine Crockett, what does that mean for the party? And then what does that mean if they win? Does that mean that the country, because Texas is probably the hardest place to try to make a Democrat translate. And so if it's translating in Texas, if Talarico wins, then maybe the strategy is have somebody more moderate to move forward.
That's the Dem fever dream, though, in Texas that I keep mentioning. It was Beto, I was born to do this, Robert Francis O'Rourke, right? Who was on the cover of Vanity Fair or Glamour or whatever, saying how he's born. He looked like a moderate. They had the woman who stood on the floor in her sneakers and gave that filibuster speech, and she looked like a moderate. Colin Allred, former NFL player, former congressman, plenty of things that make him look really good, but not Texas is still not there. And Colin Allred ran against Ted Cruz, 2 years ago? And we saw that even when they keep trying. So I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't if you're a Democrat in this. You either go with Crocket, who has more of that kind of grassroots base, low dollar donor enthusiasm, and she's much more radical and much further to the left and much more bombastic, very hard to run in a general. But she's got the enthusiasm behind her of the party, and she's more true to where a lot of the party is. Or you have Talarico, who might get through in the primary, which I think he will, but he is setting himself up for the same fate of the others.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, we're only a couple weeks away, and everyone's
it's the
just
first
staring at
primary.
I know, it's like this is. Robbie and I keep calling everything Super Bowl. Everything can't be Super Bowl, but this is like
this is kickoff.
Academy Awards or something another big event. I think Jasmine Crockett. She has her hands full with trying to figure out what's next. There's a conversation around how much people are trying to bash what she can do, because I think there's a little bit of fear that if, like there was fear about Mamdani, right? If we push somebody through that's this dramatic in a sense of a turn for Texas, what would that mean for the rest of the country? With Mamdani, it's looking like it's working out fine. We'll see what happens next. He might get federal funding. We'll see how the policies are actually enacted. But I think that because people are spending so much on the Republican side, there also is more of a fear, more than they've spent historically, that they don't want Jasmine Crockett to be there. And she knows that voters are apathetic in Texas a lot more than other states. I think around 50% voted in the general election, the last election. So if her goal is to get those people that generally like this, I know how the state's going to go. Even in New York, I know how this is going to go. It's a blue state. A lot of people in Texas, I know how this is going to go. If she gets bus off seats to the voting poll, what does that mean? If Texas, is known for its apathy.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a big hypothetical. You'd have to see if she can bring in more voters. I see her subtracting instead of adding with her messaging. I don't see her bringing in more voters or getting people enthused to come off the sidelines. But I do think that the Republicans are likely to head to a runoff here. They have to hit a 50% threshold. If somebody doesn't, it goes to a runoff. And if we've seen a lot of money already be spent in Texas, just in this primary so far, over $100 million, you just wait until we get into a Republican runoff. It is going to be big money all the time in Texas on ads, on voter targeting, on conversations, on turning out your voters, because they have the run up to May, and then it's on to the general. And I will say this. Primaries should be this early. I love an early primary. Give me a long runway to a general election as a political consultant, but this is going to be one for the history books. Honestly, this is actually a very wild primary to watch because Democrats haven't had anything to be excited about in Texas in a primary in a long time. What does that translate to the general and everything? Oh, man.
Well, everything's bigger in Texas, they say, right? We have a lot more to talk about. Stay with us on Rising.